Torah, V'tzivanu
La'asok
b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
I don't know what this label now says. By staying in this meeting, you consent to sharing your information, including audio and video. Users with access to third-party service can watch. That means that people are spying on us. So please, by the way, Rebecca, you sat next to very nice people who were brand new to the congregation last night, folks from Chicago. That was very nice. They seemed lovely.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to start off with a current events, very short list. Current events, February 7th is the next, Chevra 5th is the next current events class. But we have a conflict in the calendar, and a bunch of our regular attendees at the current events class will be happily involved in another program. It's not happened before, it happened this time. Thus, I am making a most extraordinary request. Assuming that you have never attended current events, we actually will need a few more people to give us a bulk, a good group for conversation. So even if you don't usually attend current events, if you can make yourselves available Wednesday at noon, join for an hour, and that would be of great help to the moderator who hates being in an empty room. Okay, so that's just like that. If you can be there February 7th at noon, please attend, even if you never have. Cindy, what's new?
Well, Sisterhood is having a board meeting on Wednesday. We were guaranteed and promised and confirmed we'd be in Klein Hall, and we're just told that Klein Hall's not ready. So those of you on here on the board, I'll send out an email. We're going to be in a classroom. We're having happy hour February 13th at PETA, which is at Barrington and Wilshire. And on the 23rd, we're having Shabbat dinner at Froman's. It's a family service. So we try and do our Shabbat dinners when they have the children's services.
Super duper. I don't see Jim on. So maybe if Jim comes on, does anyone know what the next film is? When?
No.
I don't think he's announced it.
Okay,
Right.
fine.
He hasn't.
Did he
Okay.
announce it, Steve?
So we're gonna spend our day talking about Revelation. Oh my God, how much did he that's pretty important stuff, right? Revelation. So we're gonna do Exodus chapter 19, verse 1, page 473. Now, the Cedra is Yitro, English Jethro. And we all know this morning, we read the 10 Commandments. And last week, we did the crossing of the Red Sea. This week, the 10 Commandments. And I don't know what big thing the Torah has in mind for us next week, but we have two really great weeks in a row. So here we are, 10 Commandments. The Cedra, Jethro, Yitro, that's where the 10 Commandments are found. We all know the 10 Commandments are in chapter 20 of the book of Exodus. That's where it's found. It's also found, and we know this as well, in various other forms, including in Deuteronomy, where it has, like the Shabbos commandment, the Shamor and the Zachor. We know that there are a few differences, but it's there again. And the hidden 10 Commandments are found in Leviticus 19. And they're almost in reverse order, and they're not set up like 10 Commandments. But if you read Leviticus 19 and you read, oh my God, I just finished 10 very familiar phrases. there they are. But they're there. But the Sedra is called Jethro. That's because Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, visits Moses, brings Moses's wife, the two kids, the family dog, brings everything to reunite the family there at the foot of Mount Sinai. One of the weird things about this chapter and about the chapter of the golden calf and other items, they're chronologically out of order. They just are. And I'm not going to go into it a lot, but if you're ever looking for signs of editing and putting together and weaving together, Jethro doesn't really come to visit the camp until after the giving of Torah. But there Jethro shows up, and he shows up, and the Sedra is named after him. It's a mistake. It really should not have been named Jethro because he came later. So when we rewrite the Torah, we're going to have to make certain accommodations. Now, we're gonna just jump right in because when I wrote my Thursday evening posting for Facebook, something unusual occurred to me. If something occurs to me, that's unusual, but something unusual occurred about how difficult it was for the Israelites standing at Mount Sinai. You know, we would kind of have, oh boy, God is giving the 10 Commandments, pass the salami, can I have a Kaddish? This is really a happy day. Well, Thursday evening, I talked about the way the text seems to make clear that this was a pretty tough experience for the Israelites. And we're going to try to dig into a little bit. We'll see what happens. So, Steve, I'm going to get to you, but I'm just going to, it starts off verse 1 on page 473. On the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Now, Steve, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, you mentioned that this is like named after Yitro. I always thought that there was no conscious decision to name any Sedra after anything or based on content, but that the Sedra's name is just the first significant word in it. And
that's totally true. So Jethro's name doesn't belong there because we shouldn't be reading about Jethro. I am being picky that it shouldn't be called Jethro. As a matter of fact, what could it more nicely be called? It could be called, I don't know, from Exodus chapter 19, verse 1, Bachodesh, but that's been used. That's been maybe Bayom Hazeh. I don't know. Yeah, you're right, Steve. They didn't sit down and consciously, let's call this Jethro. It's one of the first, maybe the first important word. But that word shouldn't have been there because it's out of order. That's the only point I was making. That's all. Now, I love to be picky. Okay, I'm going to be picky here. Bachodesh Shlishi, in the third month, let's set. Here we are on 473, verse 1. Let's set Bnei Israel me'eretz Mitzrayim, of the going forth of the children of Israel from Egypt, Bayom Hazeh. Translation, on that very day. All the commentators say, wait a second, that's not good biblical Hebrew. I mean, I know it's biblical, but it's not good. It shouldn't be Bayom Hazeh. It should be Bayom Hahu, on that very day. So why, instead of saying on that very day, it says in Hebrew, this? It's such a problem that the translator mistranslated. You know my pickiness. He translates on that very day, but the Hebrew says Bayom Hazeh, which can only be translated on this day. So the translator removed the problem, and I don't know if that's the translator's job to remove problems.
My
But
translator says this day.
fine, your translator gets a gold star on their forehead. Yes, that is correct. That's fine. But why we got this, I don't know, except that it opened the door for rabbinic exposition. That is to say, rabbis always are looking for a reason to teach something. What do the rabbis want to teach? Bayom Hazeh? Here is interesting. A lot of the rabbinic commentators say Torah wasn't only given by Yom HaHu on that day. Torah is given by Yom HaZeh on this day, every day, forever. Now, I could do a really good sermon on that. Torah is being given today, okay? Torah is being given today. What does that mean? Well, I'm not going to go into it, but it's rich for sermonics. But it also is just a weird moment in the text. When the rabbinic commentators looked at our Exodus chapter 19, they try to figure out what the mood of the people is. And this deals with what I started before. The people, according to the rabbis, came to the foot of Mount Sinai singing and dancing and ready for a party. They were up, say the rabbis. So they come to Mount Sinai. It's a great day. Hey, Mom, what's happening today? Oh, God's giving us the Torah. Yippee. Good. Then we can have Simchas Torah and get candy bars. So, this is a good thing. The initial approach of the people was joy. And it's my contention that as the process of revelation went on, that joy was replaced by fear. By fear. And it's a massive change because of what's going on in the event of giving Torah. And you're going to ask me, oh, Stan, you thought about this 40 years ago, right? And the answer is no. No, actually, I didn't. And I was sort of, there are things that you let go by. This was going to be a great festival. Eric, you're muted.
Union representative. This is the collective bargaining signing. The Jewish people are going to sign an innovative document to rule the universe. It's called the Ten Commandments. So this is the signing of the collective bargaining agreement between God and humanity, and humanity.
Yeah, that's very good and true, but I'll just let you know, Eric, for whatever reason, you're coming across kind of like with static. So
I was sick. I was sick in my throat.
I'm
recovering from the flu, so I got mucus in my throat. So okay. I want to repeat it for you for the West Coast.
Then you get
the collective bargaining. it was like we're rejoicing. It's the collective bargaining agreement between mankind and God, and man to man, so that we can innovate a civilized society, which is not which is good for our survival of the species.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rabbi, so much for that explanation between the two words this and that, because the word that puts the statement either in the past or the future, where this is today. This is today. This is happening now. So I really, really appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just invented that. No, I mean the rabbis understood that, and they wanted to make clear, I guess it's one of the themes of rabbinic commentaries, that what happened at Sinai is still happening. Okay? It's still happening. And you could say to me, Rebecca, wait a second, but I don't see any mountains quaking and all this other stuff happening. And then I guess as a rabbi would say, open your eyes to see better. Maybe mountains are quaking, and maybe that is happening. Okay, I see Howard, then Steve.
Safaria makes it easy to look at a lot of different translations, and most of them say on that very day. And I guess the Reform one says on that day. Robert Alter says what you say, on this day.
Yeah. Okay. I'm coming down on the side of translating what the text actually says.
Yeah.
And it says this. That is already commentary. Steve?
By saying on this day, can we use that as maybe a justification for why we can reinterpret things, for example, and allow that Torah does not have to be sexist, and we can read into it, overriding principles and adapt them to our society?
I hate being fair, but there was that little sign that said other people could be listening. It's always been the case, Steve, that the Bible has been radically changed under the guise of moderate change until the 18th century. It is really true. It starts off like with Hillel and the Prose Bull in early rabbinic commentaries, when the whole notion of losing your property and how do you hold on to it, sabbatical and jubilee year. And Hillel 100% changes the Torah law. He doesn't say it's a 100% change. He says this is what's really meant. But what you're saying has always been available, not for every single Jew, but mainstream Jewish rabbinic scholarly commentary has always been open to change. It's a question of speed and widespread acceptance. One of the things that strikes me so much about 18th century moving forward contemporary ultra-Orthodoxy is what a great change they made in shutting down expansive commentary. In the name of ultra-Orthodoxy, they made a radical change in how they would confront the Torah text. And, it's like, oh, they're preserving the way it's always been. And my answer is no, it was not always that way. It was open. not wide open, any person could make a change, but it was open to making the Torah livable, adaptable, different. We're seeing, it's one of the strange things now. We're seeing within the conservative movement a very painful struggle over just that. The conservative movement, which pleads public loyalty to halacha and the issue of mixed marriage. And they are, at this point, ripping themselves apart. How to do this without violating Torah. But that struggle has been going on forever. Tamara.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. Yes, I just want to add that the updating and reinterpretation is already in the Torah itself. And this parasha is my favorite example, because in this parasha, when we learned that the Shabbat is to observe because God rested on the seventh day, and that's why all of us should rest, we, our families, and our animals. But when you come to Deuteronomy, we have the same 10 commandments. Moses says, here is what they said, this is what God said, and the reason for the Shabbat is totally different. And the reason, the way I interpret it is when Moses or the text is speaking to runaway slaves, the image of God that what they need to know is that they are now in the image of God and they imitate God. But after 40 years of being free and growing up in the desert, and they think they can do anything, they have to be reminded that the reason for the Shabbat is to let the servants to rest. So the reason for Shabbat in Deuteronomy is so that your maid servant and male servant can rest, for you were slaves in Egypt. Trying to take the same law, but interprets the purpose as remembering you were slaves. But in this parasha, it's not the slavery that has to be recalled. So what we see the Torah doing in the name of Moses is updating the message for a new generation 40 years later. And that, for us, I think, as Reform Judaism is particularly a significant development, that we don't have to say we're innovating out of cloth, whatever the idiom, but that the Torah instructs us the importance of speaking in a new voice to a new generation. I couldn't resist. It's one of my favorite moments.
Okay, thank you for sharing your favorite moment. And I like the phrase, the Torah in a new voice is speaking to a new generation. Torah is still being given. And I'm glad we're picking up. I'm glad Rebecca picked up on it, and I think that it's good for all of us to do. That Torah was never a sealed once and forever. It is a tree of life. It's alive. And those who most egregiously misunderstand Torah is those who shut the gates on innovation and evolution and growing social awareness and different norms, and people are moving into, in some ways, a higher plane, and Torah needs to be there. And however else we may criticize the Reform movement, it certainly has insisted that Torah has to be there. And I love that. Thank you, Howard.
I have to say, personally, certainly I'm personally am supportive of, do think we should see the Jewish law and the Torah as a living body and a document that changes. On the other hand, when it comes to giving new meanings to old words and trying to change history, ever since I read George Orwell's 1984, I've had a lot of trepidations and misgivings about doing when I see that being done. We put it in a new document, but don't try to change the history.
Okay, and that's all part of the legitimate conversation. That's the push and the pull, and that's what makes it alive. There is Howard saying, "Wait a second, that's not the way it was intended," and somebody else saying, "But this Torah is alive. It must speak to us. How can we make that happen?" And that's why when rabbis are really scholars, people like you are really engaged in struggling with Torah, that's the proof that Torah is alive. That just is. Okay, enough sermonics, though I do enjoy listening to myself talk. The immediate, it's so much fun. Here it is. This is already chapter 19, chapter 20. We get the 10 Commandments. What a great thing. And then you get a guy like a Brabanel, who is a very fine Torah commentator, who says, yeah, it's really good that the Israelites got the 10 Commandments right there. But for heaven's sake, why didn't God give it to Adam and Eve or Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? What was the big delay? And it was just like, oh, what was so, yes, it happened here, but there were among our great teachers people who were just very dissatisfied with the way God held off from giving the 10 Commandments until this place. And yes, I got a kick out of that. I thought it was pretty good. By the way, in here, actually starting with the actual Exodus, there is another thing that's going on that I can't quite explain. The interspersing of laws regarding Passover into the flow of the text. It seems out of order. And why is it that at the very moment we're celebrating the Exodus and stuff, why is it we have to hear about matzah now? That'll come up later. We'll get the rules. And it's just interesting, highly unusual. Okay, comment, then we're going to move on because I have another, okay, Ray, I have another happy interpretation to offer. We're going to leave today feeling really good because tomorrow we're having a Noahide flood here in Los Angeles. So today we are happy. Ray.
Thank you. In your little diversion, you led me to another exciting little diversion that I'll try to do briefly, but in the question of why did the law not get given to Adam and Eve, and the various problems of who's responsible here that implicitly raises. In one of the attributes that I find is there in the various characterizations of God's acts throughout Torah, and God's personality does mutate, I think we have to acknowledge. One of the characteristics that I like and relate to very much as a human and also as someone who teaches is the portrait of God as somebody who evolves according to what God learns from the encounter with the people that God engages with. And that makes me think of Moses' encounter early, a little bit later in Exodus, where he asks what to say to the people, and God says, "I am who I am," which is a cipher in some sense, but I also believe that paints God in the realm of a verb at least as much as a fixed entity. And "I am what I am," for me, evokes an act of engaging with the people, seeing their frailties, their blind spots, their failures, their sins, however we want to look at our imperfections, and evolves like a puzzle piece to make sure that messages are reaching them that need to reach who exactly they are, but that also don't excuse them from their own will in the engagement. And that's what I think a good parent or a good teacher does. And I think that that's instructive as for why Adam and Eve did not get handed the teacher's edition of the volume from day one.
The teacher's edition. Okay. I'm trying to remember because, my mind is a many-faceted wandering phenomenon. You were saying I am what I am. Was I thinking back on Popeye the Sailor Man? I am what I am. I am what I am. I had no idea that Popeye was quoting Exodus.
I do believe the texts are exactly the same on that point.
Okay, Eric.
Does God have a schedule that he gives us information because Adam and Eve were infants? You don't give the keys to the car for an infant. You have to wait for him to mature to make proper driving decisions.
There's so many ways we can argue it. Remember that after Noah, they were given the 7 Noahide laws, right? And those were the first set of laws as a set given to humankind. And you can ask, why wasn't it here? Why wasn't it there? And I think I'm perfectly willing to say it's here, and we're gonna deal with it. Let me just move on to more fun. Okay. They entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai, which is a little bit redundant. And Israel encamped there in front of the mountain. Now, the English, shows nothing of interest. And Israel encamped there in the wilderness in front of the mountain. But the Hebrew offers a smile. The whole people camped around the mountain. And yet the verb used for Israel encamped there is in the singular. If you will, he camped there or it camped there. Now, the rabbis noticed this before I did. And they said something which I have to tell you brought a smile. For one of the few moments in Jewish history, all of the people were in agreement that they should be standing there to get Torah. So they camped as one. And I could just see, yeah, you mean it wasn't just a majority vote and there weren't people yelling and no and yes. They came to Mount Sinai, and at that moment, atypical for Jews, they were all of one mind. And I'm happy to tell you that lasted a very short time. Okay? but it's fun. The Israelites, our people, stood at Sinai as one. Oh, not exactly as one. According to the commentaries, the Israelites camped all around the mountain. Was it haphazard? Oh no, say the commentaries. They were organized by rank and position. So the inside people got the diamond horseshoe. They could see right up close to whatever it is could be seen. And the other people were, so social discrimination happened at Sinai. That the well-positioned got the better seats. Eric said golden ticket. They had the really, really good seats. That was troubling to me in our world of social justice. You mean that social injustice occurred at the giving of Torah? Yeah. But something else. Some of the rabbis say, and the Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes who had come out with the Israelites from Egypt, were in the back. We could do a lot with that. The mixed multitudes read not part of the genetic family. The mixed multitudes, not Jewish. The Egyptians and other people who joined the Exodus were at Sinai. We love to give that sermon. But some of the rabbis said, yeah, they were at Sinai, but they were standing in the back. And that troubled me. Sukasa.
You're making me laugh. Rabbi Buchtel did a sermon on the mixed multitude last week, and she said they were the hitchhikers. They hitched their wagons to a star, so the Egyptians who didn't like Egypt was able to escape using the Israelites' effort and God's effort to be the hitchhikers.
Yeah, that's great. Sukasa.
Well, I was just going to say, if you think about what went on in Israel after October 7th, a country that was very divided came together instantly and with great fervor. Is that sort of what happened at Sinai? And of course, what's going on in Israel now is, again, divided opinion as to how to proceed. But initially, there was this, everybody was on the same page. And is that what went on at Sinai?
It's a brief moment, Sukasa. It's a brief moment. There's a stage between what a great idea and what are the particulars. Even American democracy. You know, oh, of the people, by the people, for the people, whoopee. Yeah. Okay, we all agree, right? Except, what do we really mean by that? Well, we don't want to include those people, you know, and so it goes. So the first moment is one of exuberance. Yeah. And then we get down to the particulars. And you mentioned what's happening in Israel. We certainly pray that something good will come of all the negotiations. as I speak frequently with people in Israel, the tension because of the unresolved nature of the negotiations and how the next day after the war will look, the tensions are huge. And you're right, Sukasa. Everyone would say, oh, peace. Yes, great. Okay, 100% agreement. What do you mean by that? And then it falls apart. Thank you for that. We're going to continue. So, having journeyed from her freedom, they entered the wilderness and they camped there. And I'm going to put in my change. And they camped there as a single people, fully committed to what was going to happen there briefly. And they camped there in front of the mountain. And then the next interesting phrase, and Moses went up to God. Folks, please keep track, because Moses didn't go up the mountain once. He was a frequent mountain climber. And we lose track of that. And we have, from the Ten Commandments movie, the one moving up there, moving down, that was it. No, Moses was kind of on a shuttle between the earth and God. And there was all kinds of conversation. Moses went up the mountain. Does that mean that God came down? And what exactly does that mean? It's a very fraught phrase. God came down. Well, if God is everywhere, God isn't coming down anywhere. But somehow the authors of the Torah felt that at Sinai there was a meeting between the earthly need and the heavenly intention. And it happened at Sinai. Then I'm going to throw in something else. My dear fellow students, how was it and when was it that Moses met with Pharaoh? How is that for a question out of the box? Okay? How did it happen? When did Moses meet with Pharaoh? I had a meeting set up with a very lovely human being, a rabbi, who has a system in which you contact him, his computer sends out, these are the hours in which the rabbi is available, choose one. It's kind of mechanically cold, but okay. When did Moses meet with Pharaoh? Do you remember? Moses met with Pharaoh in the morning. Every meeting, said the rabbis, between Moses and Pharaoh occurred at the morning. And what was Pharaoh doing in the morning? And the answers the rabbis gave is, Pharaoh entered the Nile prior to sunrise. And with the rising of the sun, Pharaoh emerged from the waters. And that's when Moses met with him. Pharaoh, every morning, according to the rabbis, reenacted the rising of the sun god to take its place in governing the universe. Now it says here, and Moses went up to God. Interestingly, a bunch of the rabbis say, when does Moses go up the mountain to speak with God? In the morning. Just the way Pharaoh arose, Moses arose. And there is a little bit in there of the rabbis toying with Moses as a pharaonic figure, somehow close to being a deity. So that the meeting at Mount Sinai wasn't between this humble blood and flesh person and God. But Moses was reenacting a semi-God-like encounter with God. Now, this is a rich and controversial and inviting comment. It only says here, Moses went up. The rabbis asked, oh, when did Moses go up? They asked the question so they could give the answer in the morning. And those of us who read Torah know very well that that's the same time when Pharaoh, who was a God figure, arose to do what he had to do. And I am kind of offering, not as fact, but as weird commentary, that some of the rabbis felt that they had to ascribe to Moses an other than purely flesh and blood being in order to interact with God. You know that the hardest question in basic theology is watch my hand go up to the heavens. How does an infinite God in any way have contact with a dirty physical world? And that's a big deal. And so this is all part of the conversation. Brad will share what the Greeks had to say. Brad?
Thank you, Rabbi. No, I'm picking up on your last comment and sort of circling back to your very first comment about revelation. Where is that what's meant by revelation? This contact between this divine and us mere mortals? And what is meant by revelation in the Jewish context, and where is it in this particular Sedra?
My initial response is, Brad, revelation is whenever your rabbi speaks. Okay. Set that aside as a necessary thing. Tamara, do you want to try to answer? You don't want to try to answer that. When the rabbis speak about Torah giving, it's Matan Torah. It's the giving of Torah. And tomorrow I'm going to ask again. I don't know if the rabbis ever used revealing as a way of expressing the giving of Torah. It's right. It's not occurred to me, but Brad's question raises it. Torah is understood to be given by God to the people. It's amplified by the notion that there was a pre-existent Torah in heaven, and it preceded creation. And that Torah, which was of God, with God, eventually was given to the people. But Brad, push me on this. I'm not answering your question fully. I know that.
Well, I mean, just at a very simplistic level, are we talking about the Ten Commandments? Is that the act of revelation? Is it the giving of the Torah that's the act of revelation? Is it simply, in a larger sense, I don't know, this connection that you talked about a few minutes ago between the divine and the human, the mere mortal. I'm just struggling with and where is this the text that people refer to when they talk about revelation in the Torah? Am I in the right Sedra? I mean, if you began your comments talking about revelation, so I was sort of waiting for when we were going to get there.
Okay, good. Does anyone else have any other questions? What was given? All right, Tamara, please go ahead.
I guess I would say that it's a wonderful, challenging question. And I looked up, there's not really a biblical word for revelation. There's a more modern word, and the word like a lot is to reveal, but it's not used the way we use revelation. But I think basically in the Bible, the revelation is what happened at Sinai. And so it is both the giving of the Torah, but also God being made manifest to the people as a whole. That God in some ways present, that everyone can behold God's being in some form. And then that's a paradigm for any time when something about God is disclosed to human beings, and in particular, when one relates to God's teachings.
Thank you for that, Mara Harv.
My question is why God created us if we are created with divinity, how we could be created so that we would not know, why we would need revelation.
Every once in a while, this group pushes really hard, and my desire is to have a muffin with coffee, which is not exactly coping. Let me go a step back. I know we're getting near the end, but a step back. Brad, the rabbis struggled over what Moses was given at Sinai and what was transmitted to the people and when. It is a struggle. There is disagreement. Because the rabbis portrayed Moses throughout the 40 years wandering of going into the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, and God continuing the process of what we call revelation, of giving Torah. It wasn't one-time big package. So that's why you have images of Torah giving with the tablets of stone, just the 10, right? But that's an artistic image. the best I understand, and the rabbis are going to expand that because they're going to say that not only was Torah given at Sinai, but the written Torah was given at Sinai, and the oral Torah, that all the rabbinic stuff that came out of the Talmud and so forth, all of that was given at Sinai. That the oral law, the Talmud, has a status not identical to, but close to the other. We're out of time. The question is huge. I believe my understanding of the rabbi's views is that really Torah was incrementally revealed during the 40 years wandering. That's what I believe. That however you handle it, it couldn't have happened at one time at up Mount Sinai. And that Moses transmitted piecemeal the elements. And that the rabbis, to protect their own world, added the oral law into this process of revelation. And then just, I'm sorry to respond to Mara, and we've got to stop. To respond to Mara, good question. Sometimes the rabbis will say things like, God never burdened the people with more than they could handle. It is a kind of a typical rabbinic comment. We may be in the image of God, but we have to live an earthly existence. And that earthly existence requires the laws and the structure of Torah. God doesn't require that. So though we are in the image of God, we are not God, and we don't see ourselves as God. And in the image of God doesn't mean identical. Mara, I'm struggling with it. I know I have to move quickly. Do you want to push a little bit, or do we leave it there?
I think we'll leave it for another time.
But a worthy question, Ray, I've got to stop. Do you want a quick one word, and then I'm going to be Kaddish?
Quickly, sure, which is I'm observing a sympathy between the concept that all of Torah, including commentary, was given at Sinai in the same sense that when we say motzi, we talk about God's bringing forth bread from the earth, when of course bread is a human enterprise. Both are concepts that expect human engagement and development at the moment of revelation, whether it be whatever that Torah was or wheat from which we can make bread.
Thank you very much. And in order to display my superiority, I want to point out that, in fact, a bread appeared on my door yesterday afternoon, a challah made by Tamara, and I had it for breakfast. So thank you, Tamara, for my. Now, you took flour and made something wonderful happen. Thank you for that. Okay, Kaddish. I'm sorry. This was, look, if we don't get caught up on this center, we're not going to get caught up on anything. And I accept that. Those who passed away during the past month: Cynthia Ader, Minu Sahati Berleani, Nina Deutsch, Shelley Hauser, Shirley Londe, John Menzies, Marsha Arnold Nutzer, Arthur Schwimmer, Patty Silver, Gloria Strasberger, those whose yahrzeits occurred during the past week. Rose Baker, Faye Beecher, Eliana Burlfine, Benjamin Bloom, Bernard Irving Bratter, Melvin Braverman, Paul Brock, Deborah Broner, Bernard Brown Sr., Earl Bubar, Herman Berg, Henry Kleinick Kahn, Ruth Kaplan, Charles Shannon, David Cohn, Rhoda Dane, Gladys Davis, Robert Ehrman, Sheila Feldman, Hildy Ann Fell, Sidney Fell, Rabbi Harvey Fields, a senior rabbi at Wilshire Boulevard, Sarah Fleischler, Sarah Fischler, Stanley Fisher, Lynn Richard Franklin, Carl Freudenthal, Irv Gassner, Ann Glasrock, Sidney Goldberg, Eva Golden, Edward Goldfeder, Herbert Goldinger, Stephen Goldinger, Samuel Goodman, Sarah Gordon, David Gross, Edith Guggenheim, Evelyn Guggenheim, Bess Turner, Samuel Warner Halper, Robert Henningsen, Joseph Hirsch, Warner Hirsch, Frank Hoffer, Boaz Hoppenstand, Carol Janowski, Elizabeth Jane Kahana, Marvin Kalin, Vicky Carcomi, Debbie Kaufman, Melvin Kelmock, Natalie Kaiser, Meyer Ben Natan Kakshuri, Edie Kirshner, Shelley Kirshner, Paula Klein, Herbert Klein, Molly Lou Kalpas, Cleo Kopelson, Daniel Coral, Jessica Korn, Bernard Krakow, Mary Crowd, Sarah Crowd, Chaim Kurtzman, Barbara Lefkowitz, Emelina, Arthur Levin, Samuel Lipkin, Lester Lotz, William Love, Zelda Malachowski, Alvin Malkin, Diane Mandel Miller, Nathan Marblestone, Anita Marston, Steve Menkes, Ellen Miller, Joel Miller, Lillian Charlotte Miller, Stephen Michael Miller, Naomi Moyer, Russell Norkin, Joyce Olin, Thea Persoff, Francine Peterman, Stephen Platt, Bebe Puro, William Richmond, Nat Rosenberg, Ruth Rosenberg, Gail Ritro Rosenthal, Fred Rosenoff, Lillian Roth, Marlene Sauer, Maurice Saban, Peter Schonenberger, Mark Stephen Schwartz, Miriam Ruth Schweitzer, Rose Siegel, Ben Siegel, Lillian Neville Shear, and Schrager Lily, Lena Small, Leon Julius Steinstacker, Susan Hattie Steinstacker, Leonid Stolyarski, Minna Toller, Joseph Wexler, Hyman Weger, Raphael Weinstein, Ida Weisblatt, Ida Weissman, Sam Weiss, Gay Sugarman Young, George Yosef Miller. I apologize to those whose family names were mispronounced. You have additional names, please speak them aloud now or bear them in your hearts.
Moshe Hecht,
We mentioned as well those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, all those who died through senseless acts of terror and horror, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We remember them all. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yalma, Yivrach Yudei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayet Chon U'yomechon, V'chayet Chol Ba'agala,
Vizman, Marivi, Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Barach, Le'olam Le'olam, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, Yitbarach,
Yitzcham, Yitnase,
V'yitadar,
Yitolah, Yitolal, Shemei Kudishkash, Baricha,
La'ela,
Atab, Hirata,
Yishurata,
Atav,
Nechamata, Da'amiran,
Ron Bialma,
Amen.
Hey, Shlomo,
Shemai,
L'chaim Alem,
Vial Kal Yisrael, Vibru, Amen.
Amen.
Says Shalom B'Ramav. Shalom.
Yah says Shalom. Aleinu
Hallelujah. All
Yahweh.
Yisrael V'Yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May God who makes peace in the high places make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among the families and nations of earth. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Shabbat shalom and love.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom.